Live from Studio 67 in Florida's capital county, it's time to get fact-checked.
Access granted.
What is up, good people of Florida? Welcome to Week 5 of the legislative session. You have got the whole fact-check team here. Quick roll call. My name is Jared Grigas, and I am joined by...
Hi, everyone. It's Courtney.
Hey, guys. It's Peter.
And we have just crossed the halfway point of this legislative session. The 30-day mark was it was yesterday, right? Wednesday?
Yes, because it was hump day, but it was also like hump day for session.
Yeah, good way to look at it. But so, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but things
Or it's a train. We haven't figured it out yet.
And the policy is really starting to pick up here. Not a lot of fun events this week. It was kind of business as usual. But, we always find a way to, have a good time out here. So morale is relatively high.
Morale is still high.
And,
we're doing pretty good for day 30.
We're looking to get some wins here. Hopefully kind of shut the door on some of these problematic bills, starting with
County Commissioner term
limits. And, I think we got some support from the committee, as far as this not being the right process or perhaps the right forum for such a policy. But Courtney, do you want to talk a little more about kind of where we're at and how it went down in committee?
Yeah, as it sits right now, the bill is for 8-year lifetime term for term limits.
So no 4-year break and then double dipping for more.
Correct. There is also a statewide initiative on the ballot. So, Miami-Dade's voting for Franklin. And
as opposed to a county-by-county referendum.
County-by-county referendum.
And I think that's what we're trying to articulate, Courtney. And, we've covered this a couple times now, but I think we would tell you there's a right way and a wrong way to go about this. And the way that they have it written in the bill as it stands would, pull power from the voters, particularly in those small counties. And in a lot of cases, you're going to have counties that already have adopted term limits in their charter, making the decision for other counties.
Well, and not only that, our 4 charter counties who have 12 years have to go back to the ballot and vote for 8, and everyone who currently has 8 years is going to have to go back and vote.
Correct.
Again.
And it's bad process. Again, we did get some support from the committee, and I think there were times that we thought we might actually steal one. The rare committee kill. It ended up being an 11-6 vote with a handful of kind of sympathetic legislators saying, "I'm up on this today, provided that we make changes going forward." I'm not certain, or let's say confident, that those changes will be made, and so hopefully those people kind of, hopefully those folks that said that, kind of stand their ground going forward.
Right, and Representative Salzman did speak out during her closing statement that she is going to take the lifetime ban away. So she's going to make it equal to the legislature. There is no lifetime ban for them, so there's not going to be a lifetime ban for the county commissioners.
We do want to thank a handful of our county commissioners that once again joined us up here in Tallahassee and kind of pled their case to the committee and said the system as it stands, it's working as it's intended, sort of.
Elections are term limits.
When an incumbent wins, that's by design, and when an incumbent loses, that is also by design.
What we have this year, 37% turnover. So we have
according to Chris Doolin, I think it was of like the 87 or so county commissioner races that were up. I think 44 new members came in.
So it's definitely a lot. Your counties and your local communities know who they want and they don't want. So
and it's just they know these people well. They're members of the community. They see them at the grocery store.
Right, and like Larry, for all of you who missed Larry Harvey's testimony, he said, "I'm at church on Sunday raising my hands up and someone slaps me in the hand and says, 'What about my road? Can you fix my road?'
I got
please?
A pothole." Yeah,
I got a pothole. So it's stuff like that, and we know that you guys love your communities and you know them well. So to do lifetime ban and have other counties voting for the whole state is not right.
Well, that was term limits, and I think this won't be the last time we hear that, but hopefully we can, like I said, kind of keep picking up the momentum as far as, kind of putting dents in the armor here. Shifting gears real quick, we also have an update on impact fees, which has had kind of a strange trajectory so far, right, Courtney?
Yeah, we've seen it back and forth with this extraordinary circumstance definition.
And just to recap, last week the bill got voted down in committee.
Right.
I think on a 3-4 vote. They then circled back and said, let's make changes and reconsider going forward.
So Pasadomo put it back on the... We'll ask the chair to put it back on the...
President Pasadomo.
Agenda.
And she was one of the members who voted down on it last week. But she said, I don't want to, cut this off completely. But we just want to make sure we get it right. So how they're doing that is there was an amendment this week. And just to step way back, what we're dealing with here is exceeding the phase-in schedule for raising your impact fees. Right now, I think you can do 50%, no more than 50% over a 4-year period, unless you have a finding of extraordinary circumstance. And, credit to, Davin and Bob and everyone who was kind of around when that was put in, because I think that was left very broad by design to accommodate, a number of different situations where a county would need to rapidly increase their fee within the schedule. And so this is attempting to narrow that definition a little bit. And where they kind of landed, the bill that got voted down last week, we'll say, was basically a growth over expectation formula, right? I think it wasn't just like pure growth. It was like the projected growth
plus 1.25.
Yeah, if your actual growth exceeded the projected growth by 25%, that was considered extraordinary.
Right. And the way that the math worked out, we would never have a county
We ran the numbers.
We ran
Nobody would hit that.
So,
and I'm sure that was by design.
Right.
But we said, let's make this something that's at least workable,
right.
where, a county could conceivably hit this threshold in our lifetime. And so where they landed was a little broader. It was essentially Courtney, do you have the exact language? I think it was the measurable impacts of development on the county. And that's specifically narrowing it to population growth, maintenance costs, road costs.
Yeah, population growth, development increase, vehicle miles, and maintenance costs.
Yep. So, that is kind of the new threshold for extraordinary. If growth in any of those sectors, any of those areas, is what a county or a court would find extraordinary, that's the new threshold. So with the new language, the bill passed unanimously. So I think at least in the legislature's eyes, they kind of got the fix they wanted.
Yep.
But we will keep you guys updated on that going forward. We are going to pivot to Peter, who has been uncharacteristically quiet and is just dying to talk over here. Peter, I understand you made your debut at the podium this week. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did.
How'd it feel?
It was great. I mean, it was intimidating, but it was great. And, after talking about utility relocation on repeat for about 2 or 3 weeks, I felt fairly confident.
You finally got to do it in public.
Yeah.
That's how we do it. We make you just tell us the story in the office 900 times. And then send you out.
So, yeah, I mean, FAC got up and testified against Senate Bill 818 in Senate Transportation. They did add an amendment. It was a very, very small amendment, but with a big impact. The legislature declared that this legislation fulfills a state interest, which essentially makes it, an official unfunded mandate. So I got up there and I pretty much explained to the best of my ability that it creates a broad exemption for these broadband cable and video. It leaves the other utilities out, and it is a fundamental and generational shift in policy from decades of the utility provider paying for the relocation. Some of these rural counties, they're going to be spread too thin if they have to subsidize relocation.
Yeah, and Pete, it occurs to me that, the risk of relocation is kind of baked in already to, their right to use our county right-of-ways, right?
Correct.
And so I think to push that burden entirely onto our shoulders is just a little unfair, and we're looking for kind of more of a balanced solution here.
Yes, that's right. And like just echoing what you just said, I mean, it is a public right-of-way. We give them the rights to use that public right-of-way. And whenever, we want to expand a road or they're interfering or work needs to be done and we request that work to be done, they want the cost to be shifted over to us.
And generally speaking, I think our county, capital projects plans are typically done on like a 5-year planning horizon. So there shouldn't be any ambushes as far as, road expansion projects that are catching, ISPs off guard here, wherein they would need to move their utility lines. So again, Pete, appreciate you going up there.
We did get one no vote, so that was great.
This is good. Yeah. That was all you, man.
Yeah, working the committee and
Right.
At least it wasn't unanimous.
And on the flip side of that, Senator DeSigli has the Road Builders Bill, Senate Bill 462, which had the language that a utility owner would have to pay back FDOT or the local jurisdiction for reasonable damages for failure or refusal to timely remove or relocate a utility, and they stripped that out of the bill. So there's a few sides to this utility relocation thing. We have Peter's side where we're going to pay broadband and cable internet, and then there was this other side that if a utility, messed something up when they were in there, or if they just didn't get to it on time, they were going to have to pay us. So this would be electric or water, and they took that out of the DOT bill. So we're going to pay broadband and internet cable, and we are not going to get reimbursed if another utility messes up our stuff underground. So we're kind of getting
love it.
double whammied with utility relocation this year.
We just need to make them see that that's not a workable.
It's not workable.
Framework here for us. Appreciate that update, Courtney. I got a couple environmental things for you guys, just quick updates. It's going to be a lot of the same stuff that I talked about last week, but a couple of these bills did move. The first is Senate Bill 810. That's the stormwater inspection rule that is being carried by Senator Burgess, and we've made a lot of incremental progress. I've been practically living in his office. His staff is probably sick of me by now. Just to recap, what the bill initially did was require annual inspections of all known works within a county's stormwater system. At the second stop, we trimmed that down to only MS4 permitted structures, which is still obviously a pretty broad universe that's capturing kind of the overwhelming majority of stormwater management systems. And then at the last stop, we trimmed it down even a little further, although I think there is still work to be done. Where we have landed now is Senator Burgess claims he's given us kind of additional discretion to identify the at-risk structures as far as, where operational failure would lead to kind of sustained flooding in the surrounding area. And, again, while I think we've made incremental progress here and do appreciate his time, I think that, there's work to be done to narrow that universe because just for some context, a number of our counties are already doing routine inspections of their stormwater systems, typically on a 5 to 10 year interval. And the reason being is just kind of the sheer volume of structures here that we're, potentially reviewing or inspecting. And so to trim that down to 1 year, that's pretty heavy-handed. That's a pretty drastic change. And so if we're going to do something like this, I think it's appropriate to make it more risk-based as much as possible, where we're only really capturing kind of the highest vulnerability structures. So, the bill does not have a House companion right now, but, assuming it does get one, hopefully it doesn't, fingers crossed, I think that is kind of the argument we will be trying to make over there, is that this is just still too burdensome for our local stormwater utilities and managers. So again, that one heads to the floor, but with no House counterpart in sight. So hopefully we can keep it that way. The second thing is just continued development of a series of waste incinerator and waste to energy facility bills, and they're really hedging their bets on this one. I think we're up to 5 different bills that on some level, consider preempting siting of new waste to energy facilities. Specifically, the one that moved this week was House Bill 1609 by Reps Weinberger and Barrero. And what that's saying is that, a county cannot site a new waste to energy facility or any kind of waste facility with an incinerator within a half mile of any residential neighborhood or school. And that's half mile from the smokestack itself. And I think our first thought here is we want to make sure that existing facilities have coverage, So we do appreciate Rep. Weinberger and Rep. Barrero adding a grandfathering clause that's kind of capturing all the existing facilities. But I know a number of counties also have kind of future plans to add modernized facilities. And so this might be kind of kneecapping their plans to do so. I hate to, say that we should get shovels in the ground as soon as possible before this gets implemented. But, I think that was something we're concerned about. But even broader, just philosophically, I think we would like to see this be a local issue decided at the local level and let the people of these communities kind of object if they have such an objection. So again, we'll be following that one. The other thing I wanted to add on that front is that similar language got added to Senator Martin's plastic bill. For a while, that bill has been just building off kind of an existing preemption of plastic containers and their regulation, and now we're adding this waste incinerator language there as well. So like I said, they're hedging their bets. I can't imagine those who have been supporting the plastic preemption are thrilled about this because, that's potentially a poison pill for this legislation, and hopefully we can make future committees see that. And that's all I really got for you guys on the environment front, although I think we got a bill that's kind of got some overlap between myself and Courtney. Courtney, do you want to cover the turf preemption in this construction regs bill?
Yeah, so the construction regs bill is small but mighty. It makes quite a few changes to a lot of different parts of environment and local government change orders. So starting right off at the top, the turf preemption, as we're calling it, synthetic turf, local government cannot adopt or enforce any ordinances relating to the synthetic turf. One of the amendments that was tacked on this week during committee made it so that the Department of Environmental Protection had to adopt some minimum standards. So I can't remember who said it in committee, but, can I buy turf from China and put it in my backyard? No. The Department of Environmental Protection is going to come up with these minimum standards that a local government has to abide by, and if someone's breaking those rules, then they can say, hey, you guys can't put this in. So until that happens, local governments can currently have ordinances on this. The second piece to this is
and that's a positive change from where it was. I want to clarify.
Because at
initially
first this was
a
just
pretty blanket
broad
preemption of it was
no turf.
It was we could not prohibit turf altogether, and then in single-family residential districts, we can't regulate it, period. In any fashion. And so I think we're moving in the right direction as far as at least there is going to be state action on this now. I think far too often we see preemptions where, XYZ is preempted to the state, and the state doesn't do anything with it. It's purely about, kind of consolidating the power from local governments. And so as much as, this isn't necessarily a perfect fix, I think at least we've made some progress on handling this issue.
Yeah, and the second part to this is change orders. It requires that the local government approve or deny the change order to a price quote within 30 days. Within this, we must list the actions necessary to remedy the deficiencies. And if we don't do this, then the local government is on the hook for any additional labor, staffing materials, supply, equipment, and overhead associated with the change order. So we hate a shot clock. We're trying to work on this part. We don't want to lock you guys into these 30-day change orders, because the theory here is that if you get a change order on a Monday before a county commission meeting on a Tuesday, it would immediately have to go up that next day, in the sense that you guys might not have another meeting that month. The third part of this brings back good old public works projects. A political subdivision may not penalize a bidder for performing a large volume of construction work for the state or political subdivision, or reward a bidder for performing a smaller volume. So this is opening back up that public works section that we dealt a lot with last year. We are definitely keeping an eye on that. The last bit of this has to do with contracts between a builder and their owner, and that the local enforcement agency cannot require any ancillary documents such as letters of intent, material cost, labor, or overhead profit statements as a requirement to apply for or receive a building permit. So we are also keeping an eye on this one. We want to make sure it's not opening up any loopholes or anything like that, or undoing what's currently in statute or what local governments have on the books already. But Jared, that's all I have with construction regulations. So like I said,
thank you, Courtney. God,
a
that
lot,
public works,
I know, public
section
works,
of
a
statute
lot in one
is
bill.
just getting beaten to death
Right.
the last decade.
Right. We're watching this one closely for you guys.
Appreciate that update, Courtney. Peter, I understand you got one last thing. You want to bring us home?
Yeah, we supported cybersecurity incident liability for the second time this week. This time it was in the Civil Justice and Claims Subcommittee. And there was not too many changes to the bill this time around. There was an amendment that narrows and clarifies what is inadmissible in court, and it addresses the mere existence of a liability shield that could have been attained through compliance in regards to a local government cannot be used to establish fault if the entity failed to comply. So essentially, this provides stronger protections against plaintiffs attempting to argue fault based on failure to obtain a statutory safe harbor, and that helps our counties.
Yeah, and so kind of the big picture, effect that as long as counties are following the best practices, the standards from, NIST and stuff like that, they have some legal coverage if there were to be an incident anyway. And just, I want to take a step back real quick. This bill did get vetoed by the governor after passing the legislature last year. I think the governor felt that, I actually think it was more on the private side that he felt they were being given too much kind of carte blanche and a little too much coverage. So I think we're walking a slightly tighter line this year, but kind of the overall impact for counties is the same. It's a positive change, as far as giving us that coverage.
Yeah, and those changes that make this bill all that better, more coverage and tighter frameworks or more compliance with those frameworks, it really incentivizes local governments to adopt these cybersecurity measures and make sure that their systems are safe and their citizens.
Well said, Peter. And Courtney, you look like you got something on the tip of your tongue. What's going on?
Yeah, I was just going to mention we have not forgotten about Amir Silo, Health, Safety, and Justice. If you guys have any questions regarding immigration or the Department of Emergency Management bill,
We got our top minds on it.
right, Eric Poole over in the Institute of County Government is backfilling for Amir. So if you guys have any questions, just reach out to him and he can most likely answer them for you.
Excellent point, Courtney. Great. I was going to go to housekeeping items next, and I think that's a great point you make. With that being said, I think this wraps us up for the week. As always, thank you all for listening to Fact Check, and we will see you next week for Week 6.
Miami-Dade days.
Oh my gosh!
Get your paella
that's
with a
the big
side
one, yeah.
of pollen is what we're saying this year. Bring your allergy pills
Oh
if you're
gosh!
coming.
God knows I have them. Yeah, we'll see you guys for cigars and paella next week.
So thanks everybody.
Take care, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.